Okay. Good morning, everyone. Really nice to see you on the call today. This week's conversation is all about due diligence. Due diligence is one of my favourite parts of acquisitions. I've done about 70 or 80 acquisitions and demergers and sales. So due diligence is always the most interesting time on that, because clearly that's when a lot of the disclosures come out, which then end up with having quite a lot of backwards and forwards in terms of pricing in particular and the valuation of the business. So when I'm helping companies to get ready to sell their business, preparation for due diligence and understanding that is probably one of the most important parts of the sales process. So welcome to our session today. Firstly, I'd like to talk about due diligence for those of you who haven't been through that process before. In the context of selling your business, due diligence is the comprehensive appraisal of a business undertaken by the prospective buyer. And it helps them to understand more clearly what your assets are, your liabilities are, and the commercial potential for your business when they take it over. So really the purpose of the due diligence is to provide that buyer with a much more complete understanding of your business that they're considering to acquire. It enables them to make a much more informed decision and mitigate potential risks. So it's really important to be able to disclose as much as possible about the business, because that's what builds up trust. If there's something that's hidden away that they uncover during this time, it can really disrupt the acquisition of your business. So for yourself as a seller of your business, due diligence is also an opportunity to showcase the strengths of your business and proactively deal with any potential concerns. It's much better to come up with these beforehand, before they're spotted during due diligence, if there's any challenges or indeed opportunities for your business. During due diligence, I find that buyers will typically focus on several key areas. And indeed, when I buy a business, I've got a whole spreadsheet which covers legal, commercial, and operational due diligence and financial due diligence. And I'll really go through ticking the boxes. This process can take between 1 and 6 months normally, depending on how well prepared you as a seller of your business are. So the buyer will have a look at the financial health, the legal compliance, operational efficiencies, and growth potential of your business. They'll really be keen to look in great detail at your financial statements for the last 3 to 5 years, any contracts you have to deliver your products and services, license, any intellectual property you have said that you have, or indeed they feel that you might have, and also any other relevant documents to assess the business's performance, help them to identify any red flags or anything that they might have to address post-acquisition. So there's an awful lot that needs to be taken through, and we'll go through in a little bit more detail on this call this morning. But one thing as a seller to be really aware of is that the due diligence can have a significant impact on the sales process. If you have a successful due diligence review, it can provide your buyers with a lot of confidence, and that means that they'll move forward with the acquisition quickly. But on the other hand, if they uncover material issues that you haven't disclosed before due diligence, this can lead to renegotiation of the terms or even termination of the contract. So I always like to provide examples on each of these slides, and in this one, this was a tech company I worked with, which had, at the time, groundbreaking software, which was used within the healthcare industry. Healthcare is one of my specialities. I've been working in it for about 20 years. So the founder had been backwards and forwards over the years and had poured his heart and soul into building up the company. And they were really keen to sell the company so that the innovation could move to the next level. It needed a lot more investment to bring it from a business-to-business product to a business-to-consumer product. So he was really excited when a major healthcare corporation expressed an interest on acquiring the startup. But clearly he understood that due diligence would be a key factor in determining whether this healthcare corporation would buy the business. So they started their comprehensive review of the startup's financials, their contracts, and in particular their intellectual property, but also other key areas. They did, through that process, uncover some really concerning issues. So the startups' patient data management processes, which obviously are really important to get right in healthcare, they weren't fully compliant with healthcare regulations. Unfortunately, this often happens with startups, so it's something to look at before you decide to sell your business. So there were some pending lawsuits related to the intellectual property infringement. So, thanks to a really thorough due diligence process and the healthcare corporation working really closely with the seller, these risks were identified early on in the process, and the healthcare corporation was really used to this type of thing. So they were able to work with the startup founder and develop a plan to address them. So although the original price was negotiated down to allow to cover this, the founder was actually quite happy with the end result, and they had a revised purchase agreement that included specific indemnifications and warranties related to the regulatory and legal issues that they'd uncovered. And they also had put in place a really detailed post-closing transition plan to ensure smooth operation, which included some time of earnout for the founder. By the time the deal closed, both parties were really confident that they had a clear understanding of the opportunities and challenges ahead. The exciting thing is this little healthcare startup is now in the hands of a big corporate, so it's poised to reach a wider audience through a B2C approach and make a real impact on the healthcare industry. And that's really due to the insights that were covered during the due diligence process. So although it can be tough at times and it's a bit of a rocky road occasionally, as long as you keep the dialogue open during these discussions, as you can see with this example, it really helped them to move forward and get a really good sales agreement that worked for both sides. So how do you prepare for due diligence as a seller? As I've explained on a few of my previous calls, I always think it's a little bit of an unfair and uneven playing field when somebody sells their business that they've matured and grown over many years, and they sell a business once and they're up against people who might have bought, like myself, 50, 100 plus businesses. So it's really important as a seller that you understand what due diligence is, and you have to be as proactive as possible and be prepared for the due diligence because it can make a massive difference on your business sale. This is what makes a difference between going through the due diligence process in a month to taking 6 months plus and the deal falling apart. By organising and updating your key documents and records in advance, it really helps the process to be smoother, and it proves what a good seller you are. It says a lot about your company and how organised it is, and it demonstrates your commitment to transparency and professionalism, which really helps make a good initial positive impression on potential buyers and start to build up that trust. So if you're thinking about selling a business, it's really good as soon as you start to do that, to start gathering and reviewing essential documentation. That includes your financial statements. We covered those in week 3, which will be on YouTube if you want to give reference to that, but that includes 3 to 5 years of things like your P&Ls and your balance sheets. You also want to make sure that your tax returns are there and disclosed and in place, because the buyer will always want to look at those and compare them against what your published financial statements say. And it should also include things like any intellectual property that you have. If you haven't got intellectual property on something that should have it, it's a very quick and easy process to get that ball moving, which can improve the value of your company. And the other thing is things like licenses and contracts. You want to make sure that all of these records are accurate, up to date, and easily accessible. And that includes disclosing anything that you think might be a red flag for the buyer, areas of concern such as potentially pending legal issues or regulatory compliance issues if you're in that type of sector. And you want to be able to be prepared to address those openly and honestly with the buyers. If you can anticipate common buyer requests and questions, it can also help you to prepare effectively. And what I have done is on the Sales Success Circle membership site, at the entry level, the free level, you have all the documents which give you a checklist of everything that you need to prepare for due diligence in terms of legal, commercial, and financial. So, you know, if you sign up to that, as I say, the free entry level will provide you the checklist to really help you to start to prepare. Buyers will typically seek information such as topics on revenue growth, customer concentration, employee retention, and market share. They're less likely to be interested in your company if you rely on one or two customers. So that is a really critical thing, is to demonstrate the top, depending on the size of your company, top 10, top 20, top 100 customers. And they'll also be keen to know how long people stick around. So the employee retention is a really good thing. People don't want to have to buy a business where there's no staff. I was actually negotiating 3 weeks ago for a business acquisition, and it turned out that it was only a small business, but all the critical staff were due to leave. So to me, there wasn't a business to sell, and the business and the whole transaction fell apart. So that's just something to consider. And the market share, very often people will be wanting to know who your main competitors are. So it's really good to be wary of that. And often if you're second, third, or fourth on that list, it's great for a buyer because they love the fact that there's potential there to become the best rather than to have to stay as the best. So that's just a few of the areas. And again, they are covered in detail on our Sales Success Circle. But you want to make sure that you have clear, concise answers and supporting data ready. Then this really helps to streamline the due diligence process and make it just a little bit less painful. You're always going to have tons and tons of questions during this process from your potential buyers. And I would recommend putting together an Excel document. It's as simple as that, and putting all the questions and the answers that you've provided on there, because 9 times out of 10, they come back and ask exactly the same question again. So it's really good to have that as a shared document on a shared drive. So I wanted to give you another example. I worked with this lady, Sarah. Sarah had an e-commerce business, and she did so much work to prepare her company for sale, to make sure that due diligence went as quickly as possible. She wanted to make sure she was fully prepared for any buyer requests. So the first thing they did is they actually used my framework and began gathering and organising all of the company's key documents. So that included the financial statements, the customer contracts, the employee agreements, or each and every one of the contracts with employees, and loads more. So what I would recommend is, if you're going through this process, you set up a secure online data room. That might sound a bit flash, but all you have to do is do a protected Google Drive where you can put all this information. That means that the buyers, once they've signed a non-disclosure agreement, can easily access and review the information that they need. And any additional requests and your FAQs that you've completed should be in that shared drive as well. So Sarah organised her document, and when she was doing that and putting the customer contracts in place, she realised a few of them were out of date, and the terms and conditions were the old ones. So she realised that might be a red flag for the buyers. So before she had any interested buyers, she actually worked with a legal team to update the contracts and ensure that they were in line with the current industry standards, because things would change a little bit in e-commerce at that point. She also took a lot of time to review her financial statements with her accountant to see where there might be some red flags for potential buyers. So there were a couple of very strange trends, as you'd expect post COVID times. So she was able to provide concise explanations for each of those trends or one-time expenses. So that enabled her to proactively head off any queries that she might have had on those. So Sarah had an interested buyer that expressed interest, and she knew she was ready. So once the NDA was signed, she shared the access to the online data room. And she really made an effort each morning to respond to any questions that had been raised the day before by her buyers and any requests for additional information. So the buyer, they had a really good relationship, actually. There was a lot of trust there, and they were really impressed at how organised she was. So she had due to that sort of proactive approach and all of the preparation she'd done to due diligence, it was actually a really, really smooth DD process, and the sale moved through really, really quickly. I think it closed in about 7 weeks, and Sarah was happy that she'd actually found the right buyer. But due diligence doesn't always go as smoothly as it did for Sarah. So I wanted to spend an opportunity to look at the common due diligence pitfalls. Whilst due diligence is a critical step in your business sale, the common things that you want to try to avoid is financial records. That's what I often find is not right, and it's really important to make sure that your financial records are in place before you think about selling your business. Buyers really rely on your financial statements and to assess the health and profitability of your business. So if there's any discrepancies at all or any missing information, it really rings alarm bells for your potential buyer and can delay or, unfortunately, derail the sale process. So financial records 3 to 5 years, checked by your accountant and signed off. Ones that match what's on company's house is really important. The next one will be unresolved legal issues or disputes. So anything like a pending lawsuit from an ex-employee or from a customer, any regulatory violations if you work in that type of environment, or contract breaches can cause significant liabilities for buyers, and that make them really hesitant to move forward with an acquisition. So before you think about selling, when you're putting together your data room, check these things out and try to resolve any legal issues proactively before entering into sales discussions. I would say, though, the important thing is to be transparent about these or the potential for those, because it's quite cheap and easy to indemnify and provide warranties on these type of potential issues, which make the business buyers a lot more comfortable. One of the things that strikes me most often, particularly as there's more tech companies that are for sale these days, is there's a real inadequate IP protection. So you need to make sure that you've got the right protection on your intellectual property, because that can really help to move your sale along and boost the valuation of your business. You should ensure that any patents, trademarks and copyrights are properly registered and enforced, and that you have clear ownership and rights to use any critical IP assets. We have some information available on that if you want more detail, and we can offer some help and support if you're unclear. I've got a really good network of IP specialists if anyone's interested. The next one is my favorite is the operational side of things. It's one of the things I really work on and where improvements could be made post acquisition. But your potential buyers will be looking for any operational inefficiencies or weaknesses. That might be outdated equipment, inadequate inventory management, or maybe weak supply chain relationships, such as reliance on just one or two suppliers, that if they folded would have a real impact on your production of your product or service. So have a look at your operations objectively and take steps to optimize them. Again, we've got a nice checklist on the Sales Success Circle if you wanted to access that. And it really helps to make sure you can optimize your efficiency and minimize potential disruptions when they're looking at your operational due diligence. So I work with Alejandro, and he founded a really fast growing software company. But when we started to go through the due diligence preparation, he realized that he had quite a few challenges that he needed to address before he was ready to sell. Firstly, his financial records were, well, frankly, a bit of a mess. It's very common with these incredibly talented entrepreneurs that they're busy working on developing their product or service, and the finances go on the back burner. So the financial statements effectively were incomplete and inconsistent, and many of the transactions that he'd had weren't actually recorded at all or effectively. To make matters worse, Alejandro's company was involved in a pending lawsuit with a former employee who had claimed that they were wrongfully terminated. This often happens with startups because they don't have an HR department. So the case was still at an early stage, but could potentially result in significant liability for the business. So Alejandro recognized that there's quite a few issues here. So he took action. Firstly, he brought in an accountancy company, and they reviewed and corrected his financial records. So he ensured that they were all accurate and up to date. He also had used one of my recommended solicitors and developed a strategy for addressing the pending lawsuit. And minimize potential liabilities. During this process, he also had to have a really good, cold, hard look at his operations, and he identified a few areas where he can make some improvement, such as a new inventory management software to streamline his supply chain, and he worked with his team, and they didn't have any standard operating practices. So he and his team put together a whole draft of them, which made it easy for the buyer to see how things operated in the most efficiency in the business. By the time the potential buyer started his due diligence, Alejandro was able to present a much more attractive and transparent picture of his company. So he did such a brilliant job of highlighting the potential pitfalls, and because he'd strengthened his business operations, it was really good. It was really easy for the buyer to see where the potential was. So eventually he was able to navigate a really good, relatively fast due diligence process, and he achieved his goal and his target as a seller for the exit that he wanted. So quite painful at the beginning, but once he'd brought in a couple of external teams, everything was in a brilliant position, and he got a good valuation and a good sale for his business. So how do you manage the due diligence process? It's really important to make sure that this moves forward as smoothly and as quickly as possible. The first strategy I would say is to set clear expectations and timelines with the buyer up front. It's always really important to make this clear. Very often I've worked with businesses who may set a 3-month window to do due diligence. If the business is very fully prepared, I would push that back, because you've got to remember there's always a risk when you are going through due diligence that the potential acquisition will collapse. And if you are signed up with just one buyer, if that collapses, you then have to go through the whole process of putting your business on the market again. So you want to keep a couple of buyers in the background in case the exclusivity period finishes and the acquisition isn't complete. So work with your buyer and establish a really realistic due diligence schedule that allows sufficient time for the buyers to review the documents that you've put into your data room and ask questions. But you also have to make sure that the process keeps moving forward at a reasonable pace. It really depends on the sector you're in and the size of your business as to how long that will take. But I would always say that it's important to try to do the initial due diligence, set no more than a month to do that. I was in one business where we bought a business that was about 15 times our size. So it was almost like a reverse acquisition. And that actually took about 5 months because it was quite complex. But try to reduce it to the minimum time possible. But to streamline this and keep it moving forward, it's really important to have your document sharing system in place, like your Google Drive, which is protected. And you need to make sure that's number one, secure, but also easy to access for people who have signed a non-disclosure agreement. Something like as simple as a Google Drive will also have a tracking process on it, so you can see who has looked at what document at what time. And it's really important to see that, to keep a monitor of that each day. You want to show that your potential buyer is interested enough in your business to be looking at those documents each day. So it's definitely worth keeping an eye on that. You want to assign clear responsibilities and roles within your team. So identify your key people who will be responsible for gathering and organising documents, responding to buyer inquiries and coordinating with legal and financial advisors. So in the business acquisitions and the sales I've done before, I generally put a lead on to do financial, a lead to do commercial, and a lead for operational, and then assign responsibilities for a team underneath that, depending on the size of the transaction. You want to make sure that your spreadsheet of the FAQs includes those people, so everyone is crystal clear on what their responsibilities are, because otherwise the process can be derailed. You want to make sure that they understand their roles and are committed to providing timely, accurate information for the buyers, or be open enough to say, actually, this information isn't available. Let's look at how we can work together to provide that. The key to any successful transaction is regular communication with the buyers. And I would say through the due diligence, it's useful to have a daily stand-up, just so that process moves forward, that all the questions are put onto your spreadsheet and the answers are provided. It only has to take 10 minutes, but it's really useful to keep the momentum by having that each day. You have to be really proactive in addressing those concerns and questions, and provide any information and clarification as needed. And if that information isn't going to be available this week, you just need to be transparent about that, and keep that trust going and keep that momentum going. If you can provide prompt and transparent communication, it really helps to build the trust and keep your sale process on track, so it doesn't waver months down the line. I worked with a lady, Maria, who had a brilliant marketing agency. She'd built it from scratch, and she really wanted to sell to a larger marketing company, somebody who sort of understood her business. She knew managing the due diligence process was key and would be critical to achieving a successful outcome. And her successful outcome was to be able to work for a limited period of time with the business, but how she had a really set figure in her head for how much money she wanted to get for her business, what level of deferred consideration she would accept, and the type of company that she wanted. So Maria started off preparing her due diligence by working with her legal advisor, her solicitor, and financial advisor. So she had an accountancy company that she'd used for years, but fortunately they were used to doing mergers and acquisitions, so they were experienced in that as well. So they created a timeline and a process for the due diligence, and she wanted to put enough pace in that, but also give the buyers enough time to review all the necessary information. She then set up, and she did use Google Drive, a secure online data room, and the buyers were able to access that to look at all the documents and information they needed. They wanted to make it as straightforward as possible, so they had some brilliant filing and categorization of data in the data room to make it really easy to find categories and subcategories of information that the buyer wanted. And they had access controls and user permissions to ensure that sensitive information was only shared with authorized parties. So that's something that you can also set up, and I'd advise. So the potential buyers started the due diligence process, and what she did is she set the regular check-in calls to answer, which were daily, as I'd suggest. So she was able to provide updates and address any concerns as they arose. The buyers did want a lot of additional information that hadn't been anticipated, and Maria and her team were able to pull that together really quickly. She also was concerned about, she knew the value of her own team and the fact that her buyer would want her team to stay in place. So she really understood that it was important to bring her team along. So she kept them informed and engaged throughout the due diligence process, holding regular internal meetings. And that was where she was able to provide updates on the sale process and, more importantly, answer the questions that her team had. So she was able to keep through the whole process the team morale high by celebrating key milestones and recognising their hard work and dedication. Thanks to her real proactive approach externally and internally, it did move forward really quickly, and the buyers were really impressed with how much preparation she'd done, the information provided, which gave them real confidence. She was able to, in I think it was about 11 weeks, close the sale successfully. And so she was really pleased with how it had gone, and she recognised the hard work and dedication of her team by giving them all the key people who had been involved in the process a bonus. It was a really nice story, and it worked really well. I would say it's always nice to think about your team when you're selling your business, and think about whether yourself or the buyers can potentially put a little bonus in place. It can be a long and winding road, not just for you as a buyer, but for your team. So it's important to keep that communication up during due diligence. Share some of the work that's involved in due diligence and share some of the reward at the end. So now we've covered the key aspects of due diligence. Let's open the floor for any questions and discussions that you might have. I haven't been through the detail in what's included in financial, operational, and commercial, but all that information is on our our sales success circle so that you can easily access that free of charge. But do any of you have any particular questions about due diligence that we could answer today? Okay. Well, one of the ones that I have had on previous meetings is that how to handle sensitive and confidential information during due diligence. So I just wanted to cover that over. It's really important to work closely with your solicitor to establish key confidentiality agreements and protocols for sharing sensitive documents. Your legal counsel will always be great at providing this if your company is large, but it comes at a cost. So we have a trusted advisor who works at a really good rate on this, but at the same time, legal documentation and confidentiality agreements are included on our website. So if you have a smaller business, you can also take that road yourself. It's important to work really, really closely, though, to make sure that you're tracking the confidentiality agreements and protocols for if you've got sensitive information to share. You can, particularly if you're working in a medical data or there's customer information involved, I would suggest redacting or anonymizing certain information, such as customer names and pricing details. And this can help protect confidentiality while still providing your buyer with the information needed to assess your business. I mention that because all too often I've found that people who show initial interest in the business tend to be competitors who just want to find out a little bit about your secret sauce. So it's important to consider what information you can reveal and what information you can take that critical business information out of. One of the other questions I get quite often is how to collaborate effectively with your buyers. We've covered this slightly during our presentation today, but so I would say the important thing is to build trust by being open and transparent. It's really difficult not to be protective of your business and only see your business from a positive light. But remember, your buyer is looking for a company that they can feel really confident investing in. So don't be afraid to uncover the challenges and the red flags. It really helps to build up trust and really helps the buyer to recognise the opportunities that are there for them to address those. If you can be responsive in your requests and proactively address these potential concerns, you can build trust and the likelihood for a successful sale. So sellers are often asking, also ask me when to involve legal and financial professionals in the due diligence process. As I say, if it's a small business, you can do that yourself, but I would recommend if you have a trusted accountant who is used to going through M&A, and if you have a good M&A solicitor, it's worthwhile involving them as early as possible. Experienced solicitors and accountants can really provide valuable guidance on how to prepare for due diligence, identify potential issues and negotiate with buyers. And I have one chap in particular, a solicitor, James, that I use frequently, who will be able to attune to the budget that you have and the size of your business and offer you the right advice for the size of the business you are. He's also brilliant at ensuring that you comply with all legal and regulatory requirements through the sales process. So you can also get access to James. I really recommend him, especially if you've got well, for any size of business. But he's been involved in about 50 of my transactions. Any other questions that have come to mind at all? Okay. I have mentioned during this presentation about the sales success circle. Navigating due diligence is one of the areas of the sales process which can be the most frustrating and challenging. But I mentioned the Sales Success Circle because we've got fantastic support resources and guidance that helps you to prepare and excel during the DD process. You can gain access to a comprehensive library of due diligence checklists, templates, and best practices so that you're really fully prepared before you actually have to go through that process. These have been these have been created by myself and some of my colleagues and business professionals who have done hundreds of sales and acquisitions. So as an example, you've got a financial document preparation checklist, one for legals, and a spreadsheet that you can use for buyer inquiries. The most important thing about our membership site is that you can connect with other sellers who have navigated the due diligence process before. It's always nice to hear their war stories and see it in practice. So through our online forums and member events, you can share your experiences and ask questions. It's a really supportive community, and you also get opportunity to get personalised guidance and support from our team of experienced professionals, which can be really essential during due diligence if you haven't been through it before. I know for those of you who are preparing for due diligence, it can be rather overwhelming because it's basically taking your entire company apart and looking at every single part of it. So that's where you need the support and resources and the community to help you. I just wanted to give another example of that. I work with Kim, and she was able to use the resources to prepare for due diligence. She used a checklist to organise her documents, and it revealed quite a few gaps that she hadn't thought about. She also joined quite a few of our webinars and Q&A sessions. But most importantly, she said to me that she was able to link in with a couple of people who were in the same sector as her, who'd been through that process. And it really helped her to prepare for her due diligence. So she was able to really go through that process nice and quickly. And she gave some really good reports back as to how much that had helped her business. So before we wrap up today's session, let's take a moment to review some of the key takeaways from our discussion about due diligence. First and foremost, it's due diligence is probably the most important part of your sales process, and the one thing that's going to make a difference between that being successful or not. You have to make sure that you're prepared to really be comprehensive in the information that you provide to help your buyer have a clear understanding of your company's strengths, but also weaknesses and potential risks. And that allows them to make informed decisions and move forward with confidence. The sooner that you can divulge your risks, the sooner that they can be turned into opportunities for the buyer. So it doesn't need to deflate the price that you've originally agreed. But the later you reveal any red flags, that's when you're likely to derail your sale. So make sure you've got that all prepared. Make sure you're 100% clear on what your weaknesses and potential opportunities in the business are, and be very transparent about those. Preparation and organisation is really essential to navigating the due diligence process effectively. Otherwise, it can be really, really painful. Gather and review your key documents as per the checklist, identify your potential issues and be proactive in addressing your buyer concerns as quickly as you possibly can. It really helps with building up the trust and transparency with the potential buyers. We also, during the talk this morning, have discussed some of the common pitfalls that can arise during due diligence. Incomplete financial statements and records are one of the biggest things that I come across when it comes to preparing that. So it might take some time to actually work back over the last few years and make sure everything is quite consistent. And your accountant's going to be a godsend to that. But the other thing that really raises its head is unresolved legal issues. If you've had a member of staff who left under a storm, they still have time potentially to come back and take legal action against the company. So you really need to be transparent about who's left the business and any risks that they might have. If you can be really aware of these challenges and take mitigating steps before you go into the due diligence process, it's brilliant because it can really speed the process along and leave you with your ultimate goal, which is a successful sale. Effective management of the due diligence process is also key. We covered that and how important it is to set clear expectations on your timescale of selling your business, establishing secure document sharing protocols, and also maintaining an open communication with buyers. And as I say, just a 10-minute stand-up every day is probably the best way to keep that momentum going. Finally, I talked about the Sales Success Circle, which is just an option for you in the future if you want to have more guidance and support through the due diligence process. As you continue your business sale journey, remember you really need to prioritise your due diligence preparation and seek out support and resources to succeed. Make sure that you do those before you and you feel really confident that you've got the information collected in one place before you market your business for sale, because otherwise it's just going to drag out for ages. And very often the buyer will come back and you may have agreed a 3-month exclusivity deal with them. If your due diligence is still going, then I would suggest you start to make sure that you're looking at other potential buyers. Your buyer, if you get to 3 months and you're past your exclusivity deal, will come back and ask for that exclusivity to be extended for another 3 months. My suggestion to you would be just extend it for a month and really push on the timescales for them to complete the due diligence. It's really important to get time pressures very clear and agreed to make sure that it doesn't go on for months. So as we come to the end of our session, due diligence demystified, I hope that has really helped you to understand some of the potential opportunities and also the challenges as you go through due diligence. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the critical role of DD in a successful business sale to practical strategies for preparing and managing that process as effectively and painlessly as possible. I hope the insights and examples that I've been able to share with you today provide a clearer understanding of what to expect during due diligence and how to navigate this and make it more easy and straightforward. I think the biggest learning from today is to remember to take a proactive and organised approach to due diligence. It really can make all the difference when it comes to successfully selling your business. If you're feeling overwhelmed by it or unsure how to prepare, I encourage you to take advantage of the free resources and support available through the Sales Success Circle, including our checklist and templates. And if you haven't already joined, I'd recommend that you do. As you leave today's session, I will set a challenge to you. If you are in the process of preparing to sell your business, take action on what you've learned today. It's really important. You can't start early enough gathering and organising your key documents, identifying potential areas of concern and developing a plan to address them proactively. It can make all the difference in the valuation that you have of your business and how easy it is to sell. And sometimes when you've started that process, you realise actually we might need another 6 months to put the standard operating processes in place, make the finances look better and show that we're on a growth trajectory, and that is fine. I would challenge you and say, wouldn't it be better to wait 6 months or a year to sell your business and sell it for double the amount? So it's just something for you to take away. Thanks for joining us today, and I wish you really all the best in your business sale journey, and really want to find out about some of your successes in the future. If you have any questions or you want to find out any more about the Sales Success Circle, or indeed opportunities to work together, don't hesitate to reach out, and Chi will put a Calendly link into the chat box. I really want to make sure that your business sale dreams can become a